there was 2 or 3 other guys with the camera gear, and they say, oh, we come here every year, and they pointed on the map, this section of path's quite a good bit, they like to be on this area. So that was just a little bit of knowledge I picked up, because I could have spent the rest of the day walking around the whole island thinking that might be better on this side, it might be better on this side.
But they knew.
It's a small island, it's like a kilometre square or something. So these guys say, I don't waste your time going around the whole place, this area is where we're going to be most. A little bit of local knowledge I picked up just when I got off the boat.
Yep, that specific location knowledge, so important. Welcome to Bird Burger, where we talk about all things wildlife and nature oriented. Wildlife photography can vary greatly from region to region. Locally, I go out and strategize differently according to season, according to which biome I'm in, and even according to which specific perches and hills I'm located at. But today, however, I'm joined by master wildlife photographer and adventurer Andrew MacDonald, coming here from someone who produces content for safaris all over Africa and used to photograph all over the UK. How are you doing, man?
I'm very good, man. Thanks very much for having me.
Good. Nice to have you on the channel.
I like how you call me master adventurer there.
Yep. Got to give you a good intro. My goal is to set a really good stage for everyone that's on this podcast. That way the audience just feels like you're invincible. So today, really the purpose of bringing you on is to hear a little bit about your experiences, your adventures, but more importantly also to hear about how you think you can strategize, since you have so much knowledge kind of varying from country to country and location to location. So we're going to walk through all of that. I guess to start out, would you mind telling us a little bit about where you photograph before and what you do now as your work?
Yeah, no worries. So professionally, I've photographed mainly through Zambia and Madagascar. But before that, I'd done, some stuff in the UK, and I'd also been on safaris through Tanzania, Kenya, Botswana and Namibia. And I did some safari guiding training out in South Africa. So I did quite a bit of wildlife photography in South Africa as well.
That's awesome. A little bit of kind of, in a way, almost sounds like the world that I'm in some video client type of work where it's more shooting commercial type work, but then you also get to kind of mix that wildlife photography work in there, which is really awesome and a huge passion of yours. Yeah. That's cool.
I'm sure you can tell which is my favorite part to do.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel right now too, so I can relate. As I think about just location to location variation, one of the hardest parts of photographing a new place is the lack of species knowledge, at least in my mind. That's one of the things that comes up, because it's so hard to photograph a species in which you know little or nothing about, even at the specific location. Like, let's say you know about the way that, I don't know, let's just take a random bird, like a great blue heron acts generally in most environments. In each specific environment, it's going to act so uniquely and different as well. So that's one of the most challenging parts I find about photographing in new locations. I know for myself, when I'm able to return to the same location over and over and over again locally, I'm able to gain a much better understanding of how to photograph the animals at that location and how to get good shots. However, because it's kind of the same location over and over again, it can also be a little trickier to get really unique shots, because it feels like I photographed the same thing over and over and I get into a rhythm, right? So I guess my question for you is, what do you think the value is in photographing the same location time and time again? So you have that on one side of the spectrum, right? Versus what is the value in photographing new locations and kind of going to new places and constantly kind of keeping up that type of lifestyle?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question, and the balance is real. It's a difficult one to find a balance with. I say for me, when I'm working out in Zambia, the main thing, like you say, is you learn the animal's behaviour in that specific region. Obviously, in most of Africa, you'll find the same, the bigger animals, or you'll find the same general species, but you might go to certain locations to find more unique species. But even those general animals, they do act differently in different locations.
Yep.
So learning their behaviour, and then also learning not just the animal behaviour, but also the locations as well. Like if a national park, there might be specific areas that I know is like a great shot because it's like a nicer environment to capture an animal in. And I know that, that's a place where this lion likes to go frequently. And then also that comes into not just the relationship you have with the wildlife and the environment, but because I'm going back to the same place, I quite often I'm working with the same guides. So having a good relationship, because I won't be driving the vehicles. So having a good relationship with a guy driving the vehicle is also, it's quite key, because he knows exactly how I like to photograph. So he knows where I want the vehicle to be positioned. So you can waste valuable seconds positioning a vehicle. But if you've got a guide, there's 2 or 3 guides out there who are also quite keen at photography. So if I'm out with those guys, they already know what it's like to look through a 400 or 600 lens. They know what it's sort of like. So they know how far I want to be from an animal. They have a much better understanding. So not just animals and environment, but also having a relationship with a guide is definitely helpful when you're out in the same location. It's nice to be able to tell the story. So I've photographed some cubs who are now big lions. I've seen them over the last 4 or 5 years as they've grown.
Wow.
So it's quite nice to be able to document like the story of individual animals. And then I would say whenever I've gone to new locations, I think it's just that the anticipation and the excitement, which is what I most look forward to. It's like, this whole creative eyes. I'm like, oh, everything's like, creative juices are going, because it's like, I've never been here before. Everything, you go around the corner, you're not sure what the next environment's going to look like around the corner. So I'd say that's one of the things I love about going to a new place. And also, like I said, you could go there to find specific species. Even elephants, they're different sizes in different locations. Up in Kenya, you have those huge tuskers. I would love to go and photograph those guys one day, because sadly they won't be around for too much longer. So
yeah,
that would be one of my main attractions to new locations. But finding that balance is difficult, especially when I'm being paid to go to the same places over and over again. So when I want to go somewhere new, it's more something I would have to fund myself. So
that's awesome. I love that. I think that's so valuable, what you were saying about like getting to tell a full, complete story. You were talking about the lion cubs, almost like watching them grow up year after year. And I don't have an experience quite that intense where it's been like, multiple years after each other. I think that 2 things that come to my mind is like, I guess like an experience I've had with lesser nighthawks or with acorn woodpeckers, in which I kind of have something similar to that, where I've spent, seasons photographing them constantly, constantly through the season. And it's so cool to be able to kind of witness that transformation of not only like the family, and maybe if they're rearing like a kind of like a nest of animals at the time or whatever it may be, but also just seeing like how they adapt to that change in scenery in the season as the seasons progress and all that stuff. So it's very cool.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a ton of value there.
Still, when you're able to tell the story, it's great. There's certain, in the park, there's certain lion prides that you get to know the prides, and it's quite nice to be able to come back and be like, oh, you've grown. Whoa, you were that cub 2 years ago, and look at the size of you now.
Now you can eat me.
And you even see, now you can eat me, yeah. You even see the same, elephants, they have very distinctive patterns on the ears and stuff, but you can recognize elephants that you've seen 4 or 5 years ago sometimes as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. So yeah, in regards to kind of like photographing location time and time again, same location, going for it time and time again, what ways do you kind of, I guess, in more detail, what ways do you find to photograph those scenarios creatively and uniquely when, you've gone out with, you're talking about going out with, another guy who's driving the truck or whatever it is, and he kind of knows what you like. How do you kind of find ways to switch it up, be creative, be unique, and not just get the same shot that you did, all those 5 years prior? Yeah,
that's definitely one of the most challenging things, I think, with wildlife photography, especially like you're saying in the same location. There was one of our older guides, sadly passed away a couple of years ago, but he used to always say that the bush is written in pencil and not pen. It is changing every day. So like, even if you're going out there, every single day is like a fresh canvas. You might see the same animals, but you'll see them in different light, you'll see them in different behaviors. So I'd say one of the main things I'm looking for to try and get different shots is maybe a slightly more unique behavior that I haven't seen before. And I think also I was very tempted, my go-to when I first started doing photography was type portraits. And I still love doing type portrait shots, but more and more now I'll spend more time trying to capture the animal in slightly wider shots, showing much more of the environment and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I've only experimented with a little, but once you're seeing like a herd of zebras or wildebeest for the 100th time, trying to just do those slightly slower shutter speeds, half a second, 1 second, where you've got most of the animals in motion blur, but you've still remain quite sharp on the eye and the face. So
yeah,
that's something that I'll probably do a little bit more of in future, just to try and get something a little bit more creative.
I think what's really cool too is when you're going to that same location time and time again, you're able to do things like, for example, how you're talking about slower shutter speeds with the wildebeest. Like, a lot of times it feels like when you're in a new scenario, you're just so nervous to get any type of shot that you want to just go with the safe shots, the things you really are comfortable with, and you're not like as kind of creative in your juices or how you can do things. But when you're there time and time again, you're like, I got nothing to lose. I have a billion shots of these wildebeest. Exactly. So you're like, okay, let's try out some like new techniques, some creativity. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's definitely what I'm going to try and do a little bit more of this year, is for sure. But it's very tempting to go for the safe shot sometimes, especially if it's something a little bit more unique, or if the light's perfect. You know, you want to just you'd call it a standard shot, but you know, you see a lot of wildlife photography out there. It's very similar because it's the same species in very similar environments, so it's hard to do anything that's truly unique.
Yep.
I know some people, you know, they'll use like the beetle cam, where they'll, you know, actually use a remote control car to go up to these animals, which then you've got the ethics come into it a little bit. So it's yeah, there's can be a little bit of a grey area with some people on that one.
Yeah.
I'd say one of the things I do to try and be a lot more unique is, I used to always, you know, you're in the safari vehicle and you're just, you know, you're shooting away like this. But now I request vehicles all the time with no door, so I can put the camera down next to my feet, you know, flip the screen up. So as soon as you've talked about it in some of your videos, eye level is key. Obviously, you're not going to be eye level with a giraffe down there, but when you've got lions, when you've got lions chilling and doing their thing, then as soon as you get that camera, it can only be like 2 or 3 feet, whatever it is, but the difference is quite incredible with the engagement in your photographs. Yeah. So that's what I'm always looking to do, is get my camera as low to the ground as I can. Either sometimes there might be a little, you know, like something in the ground where you can drive down into, so you're actually a bit lower. Or when I'll have the camera down, or I'll be lying on the ground in amongst the vehicle trying to get those shots.
Yeah, I love it.
So that's definitely where I've become more creative the last year or two, is getting as low as possible, as often as I can, and as safely as I can, obviously. Yeah.
with the given scenario. Exactly. That's great stuff. I think that. Yeah, it's so interesting because, like, we were talking about kind of the standard type shot versus like something that's not standard. I feel like wildlife photography, there's so many people that have become good at getting those standard type of shots. Like it's very saturated. Yeah, it's very saturated, not a very rare thing anymore. And I think that it's really interesting. The people who really stand out in my mind are the people who are able to get like that last little like 5-10% of quality of image, right? That are doing something different that few people, if any, are really doing. Now that we've kind of talked about the kind of the concept of revisiting old locations time and time again, how do you best prepare for new locations that maybe you've never gone to? So, you know, whether that's your safari tour stuff or not, you know, it could be just stuff as you're walking around the UK or, you know, wherever you are, Scotland, or how do you prepare for these new locations that you go into?
I would say definitely is, you know, if it's a specific species, obviously I'll research that species. Here in the UK, I would look at their sort of what times they're most active, what times they're feeding, any of these sort of things. And same with Africa, I would do the same thing, just researching different species, researching the habitat, and also, you know, finding a guide who is local and knows the area. Those kind of things are going to be probably massively helpful to get in the shots that you want. Like I say, most of the behaviour in Africa is the same general behaviour. It varies different between national parks and regions. So I think from Africa, there's not too much I need to research on different species. You know, I think doing the safari guiding qualification massively helped me in understanding animal behaviour when I'm out there. You know, you're watching an animal, I can predict, most of the time you can predict when it's going to move, what it's going to do to get those shots. So I think actually doing that intensive actual course I did out in Africa massively helped me, especially the animal behaviour part of it. So learning the animal is one of the key things. You can't just go out there and shoot the animal. You need to know what it's going to do and when it's going to do it. And then get yourself in the right place at the right time.
100%. Yeah. A lot of times it takes a lot of like studying beforehand, on location, all that stuff to get the correct shot. So yeah, that's totally true.
Yeah, and I'm always asking the guide, you know, Yeah, especially if it's the first time you've been there, or you've not been there for a while, you know what's been active in which areas. So local knowledge is also very, very handy to know that sort of thing.
Yeah, local knowledge is super important. I'd love to kind of walk through two different examples, like specific stories that you've kind of shared on YouTube and some videos, and kind of just like ask you, I guess, just how you kind of strategize those out to give like, I guess, I mean, you've already given some real life examples, but very tangible. You filmed it, you've shown, you know, the world publicly. Now, how did you kind of go through that in a little bit more detail? One of them that comes to mind is on the Isle of May, photographing Atlantic puffins. Awesome. You got some awesome shots with just, you know, fish filled in the mouths of these puffins, stuff like that. Can you share a little bit of the strategy of how you went about a situation like that and how you photographed them well?
Yeah, I'd always wanted to actually see puffins. I'd never actually seen them before. That was the first day I'd ever actually been to see puffins.
Wow.
And it's pretty bad because, you know, I can get the boat there like 1 hour from my house. I can get the boat to the island. And it's something that I'd never ever done before, because I think mainly that's the beauty of photography, is it's actually photography takes me to places that I wouldn't sometimes normally go, you know.
Yep.
It takes me up mountains at sunrise, it takes me to islands off the coast of Scotland, and it does that. Photography is what takes me there in the first place. So being into photography was what led me to the Isle of May. And I'd seen shots from there, and you know, they come to the island around March to August. They come there to breed, and there can be like 80,000 birds go there to breed. There's not, you know, there's more than just the puffins there.
Wow. So
I just arranged, there's boat trips which go out there, and you get like 2 or 3 hours on the island. It's like a proper reserve, so you can't stay there overnight, and you know, you stick to the pathways. And sticking to pathways was one of the hard things, because you can see puffins on some rocks over here. And you're like, oh man. But you know, they nest in little burrows, so you could easily depress some ground and end up affecting some nests. So it's, you know, it's easy when you think of that not to walk off the path, but it was tempting sometimes. And they're small birds, you know. They're not. I thought they'd be quite big, but they're small things, you know.
Yeah.
So that was the first day. I'd also used my 200 to 600 lens, and I was happy that I had that with me that day. So I took the trip out there. You know, you get your 2 or 3 hours, and then basically I just wandered around the paths, and I saw little areas where the puffins were sort of hanging out, and then I would sit in one of those bits for maybe 10-15 minutes, see if anything was happening, then walk to the next one, and just sort of keep walking backwards and forward along this cliff. And eventually I was looking for him, obviously, with the fish in the mouth, and eventually I saw this one just chilling on that rock, and he was in distance to get those shots. So yeah, I was lucky to get that shot, because I didn't see too many of them with the fish the rest of the day, actually. So
yeah.
That one guy stood there and posed for, you know, I rushed to get my stuff set up, and he was actually stood there for 10 or 15 minutes. So it was actually quite a treat in the end.
Yes, sometimes it just comes down to almost like just being in the right place, right time, and that chance, you know, a lot of times, which is interesting. Yeah.
And luckily, again, local knowledge. When I was getting off the boat, there was 2 or 3 other guys with the camera gear, and they say, "Oh, we come here every year," and they pointed on the map. You know, this section of path's quite a good bit. They like to be on this area, so that was just a little bit of knowledge I picked up, because I could have spent the rest of the day walking around the whole island thinking that might be better on this side, it might be better on this side.
But they knew.
It's a small island, it's like a kilometre square or something. So these guys say, I don't waste your time going around the whole place, this area is where we're going to be most. A little bit of local knowledge I picked up just when I got off the boat.
Yep, that specific location knowledge, so important. Yeah, another example that comes to mind is a recent video you did in which you got this like awesome footage of a wild dog hunting like a group of buffalo in Zambia. Super cool. I loved it. In that video you can see like how much action is going on, right? You have like so many different elements going on. The wild dogs chasing them, the buffalo being herded, and all these animals running different directions. And even at a point you have, I think they were like baboons
baboons,
baboons, running through the you know, shots and like stuff like that. Just a crazy amount of action. I guess in a situation like that, I'm curious to think, how does your brain analyze that situation and then kind of like act accordingly and strategize accordingly?
Yeah, that's those situations are very difficult to, you know, because I'm photos and videos. That's the main dilemma, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, do I take a photograph of this? Do I take a video of this? It's like it's almost impossible to get a fine balance between the two. But when that all kicked off, we knew the wild dogs were. So the national park there is actually, it's a long, narrow national park between the Zambezi River and the Escarpment mountain range. So it's only about 3 or 4 kilometres wide, the national park, but it's quite, you know, 60 kilometres long or whatever.
Wow.
And these wild dogs, they move a lot, so they tend to go from one end of the park and then work their way up and down the park over like a week or two. And I hadn't seen them in the whole 3 weeks I'd been there. And then we heard reports that they were coming, somebody had seen them here, somebody had seen them there, and they were on their way back. So that morning, myself and the guide just got in the car and we're like, we're just going to head straight up the park as far as we can get and see if we can find these guys. And then we got to that sort of open area just as the sun was coming up in the morning there, and then we saw the dogs heading towards those buffaloes. And we managed to get the vehicle parked there. Maybe just a couple of minutes we were sitting there, and the dogs just started to move in, and I'm like, okay, I'm starting to think, what am I going to do here? And when there's so much action going on, my initial reaction is actually to go for video. I'm like, I might miss something with a photograph, but on a video, I'm bound to get something.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much, I started off doing video, and then also the guide is good because he'll be, if there's something happening off camera or behind, he's watching all the time. He's like, Andrew, this is happening here, this is happening there. And also, as I'm taking photos and videos, most of the time I have both eyes open, so I can see in here, but I'm also watching what's going on with, I'm not shutting one eye. I've always got that eye open.
Interesting.
And you end up learning, so you can still see what's going on through the viewfinder, but you're still watching what's going on behind or at the side to see if anything's coming in.
Dang.
But yeah, basically on that sighting, I did some video clips, and I was quite happy. I was like, okay, I've got some cool shots there, but I can slow down. And then I started to just try and get some, just rattle off as many still shots as I could at the same time. But it's certainly, your heart's racing, and it's difficult, especially when you're holding like a 400 or 600 lens. Trying to hold that thing steady to do video.
Yeah.
Like when sometimes you can see your heartbeat, when it's when you're holding a lens that sort of size. So
yeah.
It's definitely chaotic, and on that occasion I think I managed to get a good balance between the two, but it's not always the case. For sure.
Yeah, as a wildlife photography YouTuber, I've just like come to a place where everything used to be about the photo for me, to where now it's like, man, but a lot of times I just find myself like the video it gives you so much more, gives you so much more of an immersion into that environment. And I know that's still a very far and few between type of person that really goes for the video instead of the photo in that shot, but I've come to a place more recently where that's my priority now too. Where it used to not be for a long time.
Especially if working for the company, they might say, oh, do you have any video clips of that when it happened? I'm like, no.
So, they're like, what?
You didn't video any of that, we need that for promotion. So it's definitely, that's probably made me do more photos and stills, having it as a job, knowing that I need to try and create both.
I think that's super cool. And something I actually can learn off of that is I love that you were talking about how having two eyes open. I've never tried that before myself, but that just makes so much sense to me. I think that's probably a skill I'll have to be able to learn, to how to distinguish, kind of prioritize both, you're observing, but you're also photographing. But that's something that's new to me that I'm definitely going to see if I can implement more as I move forward. So
just try it next time you're out with the camera. Just try holding it and imagine if there's other animals, just out of frame. It's definitely something that I've found helps me just a bit, especially if there's, you might have a nice shot lined up, but you need to see what's going on. Especially something like a pack of wild dogs, they're quite sociable animals, so these two might be doing something nice over here, but you had this one framed up and you can just see it out the corner of your eye a bit more. Yeah, that's awesome. So kind of just as a fun little transition, do you have any really crazy kind of intense stories that you've experienced during kind of all these different safaris and stuff that you've gone on? I'm just curious. Yeah, I've got one or two good stories, a couple very, very close ones with lions. Probably the more entertaining one I'll tell you was from again working in Zambia, and we came around the corner and we found there was one lioness and I think it was 4 male lions, which is kind of strange to see that sort of mix. And the male lions were all different ages, which normally you'd have males who are more of the same age. And we were watching these guys they were just doing their thing, and then we noticed that 2 of them went up this big tree, and we're like, oh cool, we'll get some shots of a lion up a tree. You don't see it as often as leopards or whatever. So we moved the vehicle around and then we got some shots, and then the lions came down and they were sort of playing in the grass, doing their thing. And we were parked under this tree, and I said to the guy, I said, can we just move a little bit further forward to get these shots? And then he said, no problem. Turns on the vehicle and nothing happens. Not even a trying to start. The vehicle was just completely dead. Oh no. And yeah, bearing in mind I'm sitting in a vehicle in the passenger seat and I've got no door on the side, so there's nothing between me and these lions. And the lion, the ages of the lions was also strange. There was maybe a lion like maybe a year old up to 4 or 5 years old. And the more they were playing, they were getting closer and closer to the vehicle, not paying too much attention to us, and we're trying to radio other people, but nobody was in range to hear us on the radio. And then this lion, which is maybe 3 years old, big, decent sized male by then, he starts climbing up the tree, and he starts coming along these branches, and the branches are coming over the vehicle.
Oh, and wow.
When you're in safari, it's very rare that an animal looks at an individual person on a vehicle. It sees the vehicle as like one shape. That's why, if you move too quickly, you break the outline of a vehicle, and then they're like, whoa, there's a human there. But this lion goes up the tree, and he comes along these branches, and he's now directly above us, maybe about 3 meters above us, and he's looking directly at us, picking out the three of us in the vehicle.
Oh no.
And yeah, we just as when he started to climb a tree, I was like, whoa, this is cool. And then when he started to come along these small branches, they're only like this thick, the branches weren't thick by then, and it forked, and he had his paws on each side of the fork. And I just put the camera onto the dashboard, and me and the guide just sat, and we just were not moving. And the guide said to me, he says, "Are we surviving here?" And it's probably one of the only times I've actually been scared on safari was this moment. And eventually, I would say after about 15, 20 minutes, and this guy's still up here, and he's shaking the tree as he's doing this. Eventually, he just sat and he was watching, so he was a little bit less threatening. But as he's doing this, these lions on the side here are also like, oh, what's he doing? And they were probably about now 2 or 3 meters away from me. And
oh my gosh!
When you've got a vehicle which you can start and drive away, you're not really bothered. But when you can't go anywhere, it certainly spins round, and you're like, okay, now I feel a bit threatened here. And eventually we managed to get one of our other guides on the radio, and we explained to him, we're stuck with some lions, we can't move the vehicle. And he comes in, and he was, to begin with, he's like, oh, look at you, the lions are here. And we're like, yeah, and we pointed up to the tree, and his face just was like, oh no. So he came in, and he managed to put his vehicle against ours, and he managed to push us away from where the lion was. Gotcha. And as we were rolling backwards, we managed to bump start the vehicle, and then we were out of there.
Wow.
But yeah, it was certainly not one that I want to experience again.
Relive again.
It was, it was very strange behaviour for a lion to do that, to actively go up a tree to get above the vehicle was not something we would have expected.
Yeah.
Luckily in the end, he just stayed up there, and he didn't try and jump on us or anything.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. That's a good one. I've definitely never had anything even close to that. So
no.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about ethics on this channel in a lot of the previous videos. I'm curious, just kind of in wrapping this up, how do you find ethics applying to the tour guide industry with doing all these tours all over safaris and over places like this? Do you find that ethics are difficult to keep and kind of difficult to manage, or what do you kind of find as some of the lines in that industry?
I would say, yeah, I wouldn't say they're so much difficult to keep, and luckily the company that I work for are massive on their ethics. It's a big value of ours, and a lot of the guides that I've experienced in Zambia especially, ethics is massively on their radar, which is great. I'd say one of the most difficult ones to keep would be, a lot of places have no off-roading for obvious reasons. You could be destroying nests of birds as you're looking at lions or whatever. So off-roading, when you have people who have paid for a safari, they've come all the way across the world, and you're saying you can't go 20 meters into the bush to look at the lions, it's a difficult one not to keep. And wow. It can be a slightly grey area, but we try always not to go off-roading, and definitely wouldn't chase an animal through. We wouldn't off-road just to go and look for animals. But if there's if lions have taken down a buffalo, there might be a group of people we'll use one road in, one road out, we'll look at it for this long, you go, and then, but you would never go crashing for meters and meters into the bush. It would be just off the road to get a different view. Yep. And in Zambia, you also, I think they have any more than 5 vehicles next to an animal is it starts to get a bit too much, whereas other countries, I've seen in Kenya, I've seen 16, 17 vehicles following a lion along the road, and it's like, wow. Yeah. Luckily in Zambia, one of the good things about Zambia is it's almost like an undiscovered like heaven, because it's, you know, you get a lot of the times you're on sightings and there's nobody else there. Especially one of the parts where we work is 3,500 square kilometers, and we have the only lodge, and we have 2 vehicles. So you've got the whole place to yourself there. So off-roading is definitely one of the big things, and obviously getting too close, disturbing an animal. I think ideally once an animal's had to change its natural behaviour, then you've sort of failed, if you know what I mean. If you start chasing an animal, harassing it, it's just, you do see it sometimes, and we're always just like, nah, let's get out of here. Especially if they're hunting, you know. You see lions are hunting at night, and you see people with spotlight, and it's like, what are you guys doing? You know, now all the antelope in the whole area can see this lion because you're shining a torch on it.
Yeah.
Or they'll shine on, even worse, sometimes they shine on the antelope. So the antelope, now the lion knows where all the antelope are, and the antelope can't see because you've just dazzled it with your torch. So.
Yeah.
Those kind of things, you know, if animals are hunting, I tend to be like, let's just switch off and listen and see what's going on here.
Yeah.
But yeah, you hear horror stories of some. I think some guides are massively pressured, especially if they're freelance guides. So they'll have people coming to lodges, and they're like, oh, you take us into the park, and these guys might be very demanding. And I've heard stories of them with, you know, slingshots, and if lions are sleeping, popping them with slingshots with like stones just to make them look up, because people are like, we need them to look for the camera. It's like, luckily that sort of thing is very few and far between. And certainly nothing that would happen if I was anywhere near there, you know.
That's like a whole different type of world of ethics. You talking about that, like that's stuff that I've never been on like a safari type of tour, something like that. So I've never considered that even as being a thing, like off-roading. Like that's not a thing at all where I'm at, because there is no off-roading opportunities, you know.
Exactly.
Or like, I mean, I guess I in some other ways I can hear of like waking animals when they're sleeping, or disturbing animals during hunting. But yeah, those are such like I guess more like large and tangible examples of that it could be unfortunate to hear, because it's like that could be, you know, who knows, that meal could be the difference between life and death for that lion, you know, you never know. So important to keep those respects. That's cool to hear kind of your perspective on it, and your kind of company and your groups that you work with, their perspective on it. So even without the photography side, you know, you'll have people who might be like, try to make noise to make animals look and stuff. So it doesn't just fall into the photography. It's all the experience, really. So any cool projects you're working on right now? Anything big you're doing? By the time this comes out, I'll probably be in Zambia. So a week tomorrow, I'm heading back to Zambia to work for a month. And I'm going to one of the locations that I haven't been to since November 2019, basically because of COVID. I haven't been back there. So it almost feels like going back to a brand new location again. Yeah. And it's one of my favourite ones for getting those sort of fine art sort of shots, because it's called Lua Plain, and it's like wide open, no trees. So you get those really minimalistic shots where you can get down low and the animal stands out on the horizon. Wow. So I'm very much looking forward to going back there, and I'll be catching up with lions that I haven't seen since they were cubs, and those guys are now huge. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I'll be back here. I've actually got a local art exhibition that I'm taking part in here the first week of May as well. So that's great. Getting some stuff ready for that. And then I'll be back out to Zambia again at the end of May for another couple of months. So plenty coming up. As well as posting as many videos and vlogs on YouTube as I can as I go. Yeah, well, congratulations on the art gallery. Hope your trip in Zambia goes well. That'll be a lot of fun, I'm sure. And good to revisit that location I've been to for a while. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Well, make sure you guys go check out Andrew MacDonald on his YouTube channel. His link will be in the description below. He's got some amazing stuff. It's been an honor getting to have you on, man. And look forward to just seeing the great stuff you continue to capture and produce with all your stuff. Thanks very much, man. It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe below to Bird Burger as well. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.